It's finally time, folks. It is finally time. Sweet home Alabama. Sweet home Alabama. Beep boop boom boop 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 boop. Hey guys, how's it going? Let's freaking go is right. Let's freaking go. It looks like we're ready to go here, guys. It certainly seems like it. Let's just make sure everything's good here. Y'all ready for this? Oh, this is gonna be a good stream. Beta carotene S tier, yeah, I'm sure. Exactly. You guys are so smart. Yeah, guys are just smart. Such smarts intensifying up in here. The smarts are unbelievable. Y'all ready for this? Y'all ready for this? What's going on, everybody? This is Fry. So today, finally, we are going to do the hero tier list. I'm going to be going through all 22 heroes and putting them on the tier list right over here. Now, here is how I'm going to be rating the heroes. I'm going to be thinking about which classes they control. Each hero controls 2 classes, of course. I will be thinking about what their superpowers are, because that actually really makes a big difference in terms of the quality of the heroes. You'll even have some heroes that control decent classes, but their superpowers suck. So that's definitely going to factor in. I'm going to sort of talk about what the strengths and weaknesses of each hero are. Strengths in terms of what strategies are they good at, weaknesses, what are they really not able to accomplish. Maybe we'll be factoring in a little bit of points for how good are they for budget players, but mostly I'm going to be concentrating on the very highest level of the game. So don't come to me and say, Fry, I'm rank 20 and this hero is great for me, I win a lot of games. I'm talking about rank 50 right now. So let's just get right into the plant heroes. We're going to be starting off with the very sad Green Shadow. Now, here's the problem with Green Shadow. First of all, it probably controls what is probably the 2 weakest plant classes in the game, which is the Smarty and the Mega Grow. Too bad the iconic plant hero, Green Shadow, is one of the worst heroes actually in the entire game. Now, that being said, there are some pretty good strategies you can do with Green Shadow. Even if you want to look at the videos I've posted for Green Shadow recently. We've had Green Shadow Bean deck. We call that Bean Shadow. Aggro Green Shadow. These decks did well. You also have the very old deck, which is the Onion Rings Green Shadow, the Savage Spinach, or the Onion Rings Green Shadow. You can find those on the old Fry 'em Up channel. So there are some good decks. We're not putting Green Shadow in F tier. Really, for every hero in this game, there's going to be some viable strategies. But if you're just thinking about what is the hero that I want to really rely on in terms of winning a lot of games, there's usually always going to be a better option than Green Shadow. Green Shadow is not a budget player, not friendly for budget at all. I mean, in order to really get Green Shadow, you're going to need legendaries like, you know, just the strong. There's only a few strong cards, and they're all really expensive. We're talking about things like Bananasaurus Rex and Captain Cucumber, or on the Smarty side, you can maybe combine Onion Rings, which is a Mega Grow card, with Shooting Starfruit. You can play a little bit of Control to Dragon. Again, she's not a very good control hero. You can run bouncing decks, which again do require cards like Jelly Bean, Lima Pleurodon. So again, not really friendly at all for the budget heroes. There are some good options, but unfortunately, Green Shadow, overall being pretty sad, is going to end up in D tier. Again, don't tell me there's some good. There are some, but there's very few, and even the ones there are, she might be the best hero for onion rings because she has like shooting starfruit and beans to combine it with, but overall, pretty meh hero. Alright, unlike Solar Flare is one of the better heroes in the game. The only real weakness that Solar Flare has is having no answer to Gravestone. So Gravestone decks are going to beat this, especially things with a lot of Pogo mixed up Gravediggers. I mean, it's going to be weak against that sort of thing, but even then, this can beat a lot of Gravestone. Hero definitely can beat a lot of Gravestone decks. So what about the superpower? So the superpowers, it has one of the stronger superpowers in the game. I love Sunburn. This is like, it removes what they play on turn 1. Great early game control. The fact you have both Sunburn and Weed Whack with the same hero means you don't need as much early game control. And this little control can also help for like the aggro and tempo decks because it's just quick answers to strong minions the opponent's playing while keeping your minions alive on the field. And in the case of her superpower, it gives you 1 extra sun for the rest of the turns. This is an extremely unique power. The worst power overall is probably the Scorched Earth. Second worst would be the More Spore. But again, if it's a Pine Clone deck, which you definitely have access to Pine Clone decks, that's going to be, the More Spore ends up being good. Now, so what are the different strategies that you want to do for Solar Flare? So everyone knows that aggro Solar Flare is still one of the best decks in the game. It's really, really powerful. If you haven't seen that, check that out on YouTube. Pronto. There's a budget version for that, so really, probably the most friendly for budget players is Solar Flare. The aggro Solar Flare, you can hit rank 40 and 50 and very quickly. There's expensive versions too. You can play Control with Solar Flare because, again, you have very good control. The Kabloom class and the Solar class, 2 very strong classes, also work very well together. You can control early game, got some really strong early game tricks. The Solar class is very good at controlling too because you have cards like Wing Knight, you have cards like Briar Rose, like Three-Headed Chomper, and you have mid-range finishers when it comes to Strike Through, like Astricado, Bloomerang, and Power Flower. That's very good finishers in aggro decks. Can also make just mid-range decks. Elderberry, another great example of that. You can go to the late game now. Doesn't have the greatest late game finishers. Cornucopia is not really there, but again, you do have options. You have Cob Canyon, you have Three-Headed Chomper. If you're running a heal deck, you have Astroberry. You have access to the entire heal arsenal as Solar Flare. Just finding Solar Flare, the not only controls 2 good classes, the classes also work together. There's just so many strong options for Solar Flare. You can go Pine Clones, you can go Swarm. Psycho Pine Clones is a very good deck where it's just an all-out Pine Clone deck, which is very interesting with Solar Flare because you have access to all of the free cards, the 0-cost cards in the game, namely both Puffshroom, which is a Kabloom card, and the free Little Buddy. So that makes this probably overall the best Pine Clone hero, to be honest, is because it has both Little Buddy and Puffshroom. Solar Flare being one of the strongest heroes in the game, I'm going to be putting it in solid A tier. Absolutely could not go wrong. I would say for budget players, this is S tier, but since I'm really concentrating on the highest level of the game, we're definitely going to be putting this in A tier. Not much of a tempo hero. Tempo, of course, means putting a play on turn 1, growing on turn 2, keeping more stats on the field constantly than the opponent because Solar Flare's cards typically have very low health, so definitely better to go either aggro or be a remove specialist, which again you are against everything against Gravestone decks, and then come in with your sort of mid to late game finishers. That is the strat for Solar Flare. Absolutely fantastic hero. And let's move right along to another great pick. I mean, Walnut, people were asking me when I rated the classes on a tier list, is Walnut the best hero? Because in my opinion, Solar and Guardian are the 2 best classes. Walnut definitely is one of the best heroes in the game. Does a lot of very similar things to Solar Flare. The aggro Walnut is very similar to the aggro Solar Flare. It's not quite as powerful, but it also has fewer weaknesses. Walnut has the ability also to remove gravestones, unlike Solar Flare, which is great. So there's so many different things you can do with Walnut. You have access to the aggro. You have access to late game control because you actually do have pretty decent finishers. You can use Walnut Bowling as a finisher or any of the Solar cards, and you can control any way you want. You can focus on single target removal. You can control with flowers. You have cards. You have like every removal card in the game in Walnut. You got Squash. You got Cob Cannon. You got Wingnut to play around things your opponent plays. You have the hammers, you have gravebusters, you have blockbusters. So Wall Knight is the hero that can just answer anything. And besides for in the Guardian class, of course, you have so many strong Doomshroom, Shamrocket. I mean, probably overall the best control hero. His powers also work very well with control, because, I mean, just look at all 4 of these. This might be the best overall control power of the game, even though it doesn't like remove anything your opponent plays off the field. This does draw a card and makes you not take any damage. It just automatically stalls a turn where you otherwise would die. Geyser heals your guys. This will control something for a couple turns, the nut signal, and if you have a guy in the field, Bubble Up can be used as a control card. It's probably the worst of his powers, but still. So great, very decent aggro. You can look up aggro Wall Knight, decent control. Tempo, maybe not. You have a lot of mid-range strats, too, because, again, all the Guardian heroes have access to Picanolith, which, again, OTK Picanolith decks are very, very good. You might, this is better with Grass Knuckles, who can do bonus attacks, but you do have Sunstrike with Wall Knight, which is a way of activating your nuts. Activating your nuts. So, great environments. What can you say about Wall Knight? It's a little bit weird. I would almost put Wall Knight in S tier. I think I'm still going to be putting him in A. He is similar to Solar Flare. Like, Solar Flare is the more sort of high power hero, but then Wall Knight definitely has more options. I really think he's about the same as Solar Flare. So I'll put him in A tier. But again, A tier, this is one of the premier heroes in the game. I'm going to be reserving S tier for only a couple of very special exceptions. It might actually surprise you. We'll see about that as we go right along. This could have been an S tier, though. It really could have. I just don't, again, in terms of the... I'll tell you the real reason I'm not putting Wall Knight in S tier. I see a lot of people, even in the live Twitch chat, saying, Fry, Wall Knight's got to be S tier. On paper, Wall Knight is S tier. But I'll tell you the one problem, and this problem is not a small problem. Wall Knight does not actually have good, cheap win condition cards. You're probably going to be hearing this and saying, Fry, what are you talking about? You got Picanolith, you got Walnut Bowling. You don't have plant food. You don't have bonus attacks. This is actually the problem. Like Sunstrike, every once in a while, the card Sunstrike will be just as good as a plant food, because if they can't remove your minions off the field, all your guys are going to have strike through. You're going to do a lot of damage to your face. That's a huge but, though. On the highest level of the game, thank you so much, Mega Vibe.
I love your videos. Keep _it_up. Lol.
Really
Also,
appreciate it. Thank you for the 2 months subscribing. You don't have this way of just slamming into your opponent's face. It is time to shine. It is plant food. It is things that are just going to... Even Brainana, Dragon, things that are not going to let your opponent respond to you, that is really the way to win in this game. I'm talking only on the highest level. On the highest level, people are going to have in their deck answers to freaking everything that you have, potentially. And just relying on, you know, first of all, Sunstrike, you got to have a lot of guys in the field. And then you also have to Sunstrike. This will, you know, if you have one strong guy in the field and you Sunstrike, then remove that one strong guy, you're done. Plant Food, on the other hand, which is a much better card in the Mega Grow class, that is way better because they do not have a chance to respond to Plant Food typically. And that's the reason why, again, Wall Knight would be an S tier if he had something that could just ram into your opponent's face. Again, he does have Walnut Bowling, but... as I explained in the Guardian class tier list, this isn't the most reliable finisher. It's very, very strong card, but you need Night Sun, and you also need the lanes and the block meter to be very, for a 9-cost card, to be exactly in the right place for you. And that's the reason why he's only going in A tier, though. A tier means he's one of the strongest heroes in the game, so I don't think that's disrespect to Wall Knight whatsoever. Again, he has late game. He doesn't have that punching... just kill your opponent finisher. And I think that idea is one of the most underrated ideas in the entire game. The fact that you just kill your opponent. It's going to be one of the reasons why Valk Trickster Hybrid, for example, is one of the best decks in the game, is because you can just punch your opponent right in the face and they have no ability to respond to it. Giving your opponent a chance is the worst thing you can do in PvZ Heroes. Giving them a chance to respond to what you have on the field. Alright, next, Chumpzilla. This is a good hero and a bad hero. I mean, this is a really, really strong controls. First of all, the Solar class. The Megaro class is not necessarily the strongest one. Now, Chompzilla does have access to Plant Food, but does not have Time to Shine in the arsenal of superpowers. Time to Shine, of course, is the one that Captain Combustible and Grass Knuckles has, which again punches your opponent in the face and just wins you the game. Now, Chumpzilla, I've been having a lot of success with Chumpzilla. The main decks I feel like that have worked is our heal decks. We have, it's called like Make Me Cry Mommy, something like that. That did well. We did an aggro Chumpzilla recently, which I did put on Frying Up Gaming's, and that had a lot of success. We actually used Onion Rings combination sort of as a late game finisher together with Little Buddy, and that was again a really, really good combo. Onion Rings makes your little buddies really. Can you guys stop spamming in the chat? Oh my gosh, I'm giving a bunch of timeouts. Come on, guys. It makes your little buddies free and makes them into a 4/4. So that's a cool little synergy, let's say, between the Mega Grow class and the Solar class. You have your Haunted Pumpkins, you have all of your aggro Solar cards, and your finishers and Astrocado, etc. And your Elderberries. So aggro, it's an okay hero. It's not quite as powerful as Solar Flare or even Walnut. It doesn't really have a 3-cost aggro card. You know what I mean? In Chumpzilla aggro, you're going to be relying on cards like Jack-O-Lantern, which again, instead of Poison Ivy or Health Nut, is obviously the worst of those options, or even Zapricot. So in aggro, it's fine. When it comes to, again, mid-range, you can make some Onion Rings decks. We've made some Pod Fighter decks with this. Once the Solar class got nerfed, the Briar Rose and Ramp strategies really, they're viable, but they didn't really make Chumpzilla shine as much as it probably could. Chumpzilla also has no answer to Gravestones, and as a hero that is not necessarily the greatest at like bursting your opponent down, it really is a liability because you're really going to maybe have to make much later combos. You always have the Magnifying Grass combo, which is very good for budget players. You stall for a lot of time and you combine Plant Food, which has a bonus attack, together with Magnifying Grass, which is a very strong budget card. We did feature that in the recent budget Chumpzilla deck I put up on Frying Up Gaming. So, again, you got heal. Super late game, it's okay. You're really going to need combos because you don't have any really strong, again, with the Solar or Mega Grow classes, like super strong finishers. You have, again, a few, but not a ton of options, really not a lot of adaptability to that. What the hell? Chumpzilla's superpowers are also subpar. I mean, I remember when my brother saw Devour and was like, wow, did they just run out of ideas for superpowers and just put down something random? Destroy zombie with the lowest health. I mean, this is very...
Best is Infinity.
Thank you so much, Trump, for donating $40 to my PvZ Heroes campaign. Really appreciate it. Trump is a very big Fry supporter, apparently. You got Holofor, which is fine. Geyser, which is below par. You got Scorch, which is below par, and then you got Chomp, which is below par. So, in terms of the superpowers, not great. In terms of for budget players, again, there's a few budget decks. It's not the most friendly budget hero ever. You basically just got heal, you got aggro, you got a few mid-range decks. Nothing too fancy with Chumpzilla, because it does control the almighty... there are some really fun combo decks. It controls the almighty, Solar class. And Mega Grow is not bad. It doesn't. There are some really good combinations between Solar and Mega Grow, like Magnifying Grass. I'm gonna just give this solid C tier. I feel like I know that's a little bit lower on the rung, but I feel like Chumpzilla again is not going to be very high in terms of my picks for like a solid hero I'm going to go to if I was playing a tournament in this game or whatever. So C is for Chumpzilla. I guess that works. All right, Potato Man, Spadal Boy. What do we say about Spadal? He controls two very strong classes. We got Guardian and Kubloom. There's something about Spadal who, again, on paper, seems like one of the most amazing heroes in the game, but in practicality, through my experience, is good, but not great. So you have, first of all, his superpower is actually very strong. Tater Toss, I almost wish this was a card in the game, like a 3-cost card that when it died, it did 6 damage. I feel like that would be decent. But you got Meteor Strike, very, very strong card. Rain it really depends. If you're running Swarm in early game, Stormfront is a great card, but if you're running any kind of control, Stormfront sucks. I feel like this is one of the things that actually really makes him fall short as a control hero. He has two such good control cards, and the other two just are so bad. If you start off with Stormfront or even with Bubble in a control deck, these cards are going to do nothing. Your opponent is going to have a really strong superpower, and you are not going to. I think the level of superpowers really is so underrated, as opposed to like Walnut, where his powers are very solid when it comes to control. I know he also has bubble, but they are better overall than Spadow's, particularly this one, like Stormfront. It just creates his unreliability when it comes to control decks. And when you're playing control, your opponent's not necessarily pinging your block meter very much, so it's not like you're gonna, you know, get the redemption actually cycle through. If you have Stormfront in a control deck, you're screwed. Alright, so what can Spadow do? He can go aggro. We did like a Hyper Swarm with Spadow. It seemed to work okay. Again, it's not the greatest aggro deck. Solar Flare, even Wall Knight, definitely Captain Combustible, all better aggro heroes. When it comes to control, it seems like Spadow should be the best control hero in the game, because you got the Guardian class, which just has an answer to everything. You have the Kabloom class, which complements it well, because you have some early game control, which maybe the Guardian classes could use some help. A Berry Blast, Banana Bomb definitely does not hurt. You have finishers. Do you really have great finishers? Let's like, I don't think the Kabloom class. I guess you have Colonel Corn as a finisher. You have Guardian, again, without bonus attacks. Or, you know, or like Frenzy on the zombie side is a lot of, you know, or just having a cheap option as a finisher. But you have OTK with Picanolith, but again, even though you have Picanolith, you don't have any bonus attacks. So you can take your Picanolith, grow it a lot, use Great Responsibility, make this have 1,000,000 attack, but you're still giving your opponent an option to remove it before it does any damage. You have Gravestone removal. Spadow is overall a good hero. He can just do a little bit of everything well. He can control well. He has some viable options in terms of control decks. The way you finish off your opponents with Spadow, I found very important. You have to have a lot of removal cards. You basically have to rely on your opponent playing big zombies on the field, remove them with Shamrocket, maybe Berry Blast, maybe even Spikeweed Sector, try maybe Doomshroom, like try to actually remove their cards that are in front of your cards, and then you're going to be able to hit face. Doesn't have any access to strike through. There's just a couple of little problems when you have a hero he's so good at controlling, but pretty bad at finishing. And again, Walnut Bowling is the good finisher he has, but it's a little bit unreliable. I mean, he has heal, just with Pop and Poppies, which the whole Guardian class has little access to healing, which is why I love this card so much. So, again, great control, not great in terms of actually finishing off games. Back in the day when berries were very good, Spadow was the best berry hero. Berry decks have gotten nerfed. That, of course, is because Sergeant Strongberry and Strawberry, namely, got very big nerfs. So Spadow really would have probably been S tier back in the berry era, since that was one of the best decks. But yeah, he has a hard time finishing out games, even in aggro decks. He doesn't have bonus attacks. You have to just keep grinding. The games go a little bit long, and it gives your opponent a lot of opportunities to respond to. And that's the reason why Spadow is not up here, because otherwise his classes really should have made him, and his superpowers are okay, especially for Swarm and aggro. It would have made him a lot stronger. Again, you can make Pineclone decks, Molekale decks. You have a lot of fun decks with him, like Fig Fun. You can look up that on YouTube, the Spadow Transfiguration decks. Overall, I'm putting Spadow in B. Very solid options. It's a good hero. I could even imagine certain scenarios where this would really be like a top tier hero in certain matchups. Does have an answer to a lot of things the zombies do, but overall, it's really actually because of his finishing power that's weak, that he falls short. As opposed to, again, Solar Flare and Wall Knight, at least they have strong strike through minions. Which are not relying on putting a minion on the field and then removing another thing in order to do damage. Alright, moving on to the next hero. Here's Citron. Citron has just been historically the bad hero in this game. He controls one of the strongest classes in Guardian, and then one of the weakest classes in Smarty. On paper, again, Citron probably should be a very good control hero, because he got all the strong Guardian cards for control. There's a few good gems in terms of controlling with the Smarty class. You got Brainana, and then you have one of the best finishers in the game, which is Dragon. But I just find that he falls a little bit short. Again, you have a little bit of healing with the Guardian class too now. Maybe I should be trying more Control Citron. When I've tried Control Citron, I've had limited success. It feels like it can win some games. It typically goes 7-3, 8-2, but it just doesn't feel like you're actually completely in control of the game for one reason or another. Maybe the reason is, particularly with Citron, is that his powers are actually not controlling powers. Transmogrify is, but again, it's a pretty weak power. Walnut is, but it's not the strongest way. His super power and his root wall are tempo powers. I really think this actually factors into why Citron does fall short as a control hero. Peel Shield, it's like sometimes it's so circumstantial that this will help a control deck, because every once in a while you can stick a guy in front of it, they contest it, and then you could protect it with Peel Shield or with Root Wall, and that helps you sort of control them for an extra turn as opposed to losing a trade. Now you win a trade. But it's very, very circumstantial. When it comes to control heroes, you want to be just annihilating things off the opponent. You want to find powers like Wall Knight Super that just protects you. It's not depending on a bunch of ifs of what you have on the field. That's one reason why he falls short in terms of control. Again, you have the Guardian finishers like the really strong cards Pecanolith. He doesn't have any kind of bonus attacks. Can't really capitalize on that very well. To get to Dragon is probably the main way. There used to be these amphibious Citron decks that I would do. I think he's probably the best hero for amphibious decks, to be honest, but because he controls the Guardian Smarty, which have all the good amphibious cards. You can do Snake Grass, which is very good on turn 5, together with Root Wall, which protects it, or Citron Super protects it. But again, Snake Grass decks, they're not very good. Amphibious minions in general are very, very weak stats, and it is sort of like a tempo mid-range deck, and having a low stat tempo mid-range deck is a huge fallacy. I feel like if amphibious cards were stronger, maybe this Citron would be a better hero, but in the meantime, unfortunately, I have to put him in D because I would almost put him in F. I'll put him in D because usually F is what I reserve when there's just everything's just horribly wrong and there's no good options. And there are some good Citron decks. Yeah, I mean, you can run Triceratops, protect it, play the tempo game. Not the greatest tempo hero, but it is doable. There are some viable ones, and again, control is viable. It just always feels like it comes just a bit short. Alright, here's Grass Knuckles. So, Grass Knuckles controls two classes that actually work very well together. You got the Guardian, which is able to do a lot of, in terms of mid-range decks, you're able to control the early game very easily. A lot of really good options. You have your Grave Removers, then you have your sort of mid-range strat. You got your Triceratops, you got your Pecanoliths, but most importantly, you have cards that can just finish off your opponent. Namely, you got your B-Rex, you got your Gatling P, which is a card I forgot to mention when I was talking about Green Shadow and Shamzilla. Very, very strong. But you need the right sort of deck for this to really be effective. I find it being very good, really with all the heroes, but particularly with Grass Knuckles. But most importantly, you have this card. Again, I know some of you are going to be really annoyed. Fry, how come you're concentrating so much on plant food and giving this so much credence? On the highest level of the game, if you can just throw a bunch of damage at your opponent, that is really how the most effective way of winning PvZ heroes in general, and he does have that. And the fact you have both plant food and time to shine as one of Grass Knuckles' superpowers makes him able to do these huge bursts of damage. I would say the best Pecanolith deck by far is going to be with Grass Knuckles. Again, you can either use Health Nut or Pecanolith in order to get a guy with a lot of health like this, plus 1 Great Responsibility, plus a Time to Shine. I know that's a turn 7 combo, it's late, but that does an immediate 14 damage to your opponent's face. I've done that very often, having a Pecanolith on the field, and there's an empty lane with even just a Garlic, where you're just able to do 20 damage in 1 turn with like 2 Time to Shines, and with 1 Time to Shine and 2 Great Responsibilities. Great Responsibility, of course, is the one which doubles a plant's health. That works also very well with Health Nut, which again doesn't have quite as much health, but is a cheaper card, so it gives you a lot more leeway in terms of how much sun you're using. You're able, even just Triceratops, the fact that you have the ability to plant food and finish off your opponent. Thank you so much, Trump. How much did Trump just donate? $50? Holy moly with that. Thank you, Trump. Gosh, I'm voting for Trump now. Everyone unsubscribes. No, not really. No one likes Biden anyway. Besides for the fact, whoa, getting into politics. So you have all of these tempo ideas. You have bullseye decks, which are very good. You have the bullseye, like the aggro Grass Knuckles. If you want to see any of the aggro Grass Knuckles decks I've uploaded to YouTube, they've all done great. We've even done one with Vegetation Mutation lately, which was fine. It did great. And of course, in the aggro decks, you have finishers in the Mega Grow class, like Bananasaurus Rex, like your Gatling P. Again, these are nice mid-range, like 4 or 5 cost finishers. Gatling P, and you have even things like Pod Fighter, but mostly the ability to do bonus attacks is great. You got Captain Cucumber. I've done some Conjure Grass Knuckles deck. So, which is definitely fun. Maybe not the most competitive. You can run Onion Rings decks. Grass Knuckles is a really solid hero. I'm not going to say he's the top tier. He almost could deserve to be an A. I wonder why I'm not putting him in A. It just doesn't feel as strong when it comes to aggro. I really think the Solar class is better at aggro, is really the premier aggro, so you don't have that. In terms of control, you do have the good finishers. He's kind of like high B or low A. He's somewhere around here. I don't think he's as good as Wall Knight and Solar Flare, but he is better than Spadao. This is tough. Anywhere I put this, people are going to be upset. For me, if there was something between A and B, that's where I would be putting him. A little bit sad. I'll put him above Spadao, but under Solar Flare as a hero. So we'll say this is low A. Doesn't really matter for the sakes of this. He has a very strong hero. A lot of good options. Does he have the super late game options? I don't know. I haven't really tried super late game Grass Knuckles decks. Does he actually have good late game strats? Maybe. I haven't done a really late game control Grass Knuckles where you finish off with a bunch of bonus decks. Maybe I should try that. Maybe if I would try that and see the power in that deck, I would give him a little more credence. But he's really strong at mid range, really strong at aggro. That's really tough. It really, really is tough. One reason why I've been a little bit jaded from Grass Knuckles in recent times, to be honest, is just because I used to be so good at tempo when Lily of the Valley was the thing. I feel like the Mega Grow class has gone through a transformation, and it's really gone from tempo, which was relying very heavily actually on this one card. It's got nerfed, of course, from 3 health to 2 health, making it almost useless. Now to being like a much more aggro or mid-range, and really like Gatling P and Bananasaurus Rex, and a lot of like the Bullseye cards. I guess the Bullseye cards come from the Guardian class, but you do have some really good aggro sort of tempo-y options. Of course, he has access to Triceratops. This is really tough. Do we put them in A tier just to make everyone happy? Should I let the vote chat on this one? I think I'm gonna make more people happy by putting in A tier, so I'll humble myself to the chat for this one. But again, he is low A tier. He's not quite as good. Maybe he is though. Maybe in certain circumstances he's as good as Wall Knight and Solar Flare. I don't think he's overall as good, but he is way better than Spadao. It's kind of more fitting to put him with these two than to put him with Spadao, because he definitely is better than Spadao. Alright, guys. Where are we up to now? Nightcap. Ugh. And then what? Now that Nightcap is going to go in B, I'll just spoil this one for you. I do think Grass Knuckles really does deserve to be an A, because I think Grass Knuckles overall has a lot more options in terms of decks than Nightcap. What can we say about Nightcap? He's a fun guy. Okay, his superpowers. There's one of them which is very good, and then the other 3 are crap. I mean, this is very circumstantial, It works with Pinecone decks, and that's basically it. And below, again, every once in a while, this is amazing if it gets rid of a big guy, but also very circumstantial. So he has below average superpowers. Now, Nightcap is notoriously known for basically just 2 decks. One of them is Cycle Cap. Everyone knows what Cycle Cap is. It's where you put your Astro Shroom into a Planet of the Grapes. And that every single time you play a minion, the Astro Shroom will hit face, draw a card, and you keep on playing more minions. You can play Shroom for 2s, which counts as 2 minions, Puff Shrooms, which are free. You can also do the same thing with Admiral Navy Beam. This will also directly damage your opponent's face every single time you play a Lima Pleurodon or a Cosmic Beam and really burst down your opponent that way. That's a strong deck if opponents know how to play. I used to think Nightcap was the best deck in the game. I still think it's a very good deck, but a Cycle Cap, I mean. I still think it's a very good deck. I've realized that if opponents really know how to play around it, and they're building decks around it, and they're running Trapper territory and cheap environments, and it is an easy deck. It's a very, very strong deck when opponents don't play around it, but it's only a good deck when opponents are being conscientious of playing around it. Nightcap is also an extremely good hero for Swarm. It's known as like the Hyper Swarm deck, where you're really just strategizing and doing a lot of damage, putting a lot of really strong minions like Blooming Heart You can play Shroom for 2, Astro Shroom, Pine Clone, I love running in that deck. He is really one of the best Pine Clone heroes, really just due to his superpowers. I almost feel like every Nightcap deck should probably have Pine Clone in, because together with Rain, which means you have to have a lot of minions, which means your deck is going to be good with Pine Clone, and you have Morris Boar, and you have a superpower which makes a weak guy, which is very good to turn into a Pine Clone. And just his overall swarming capability seems to make him very good. I don't know if Nightcap really has a lot of like really solid options other than Swarm and Cycle Cap, which is like a mid-range deck. Because when it comes to late game options, he's not very good at controlling. I don't know. What are you going to run? Beam Bounce? What are you going to do for the early game? You're going to be weak against Gravestones. I guess you can run Grave Flake, which isn't really the greatest answer to Gravestones. He has finishers in Dragon. I know back in the day in 2016, I went like 32-0 with Nightcap control deck, but between me and you guys, and when I look back at that deck and knowing that went 32-0, I cringe really hard because that wasn't a good deck. You have some mid-range control, so he's not very good at control. He's not really good at outright aggro because he doesn't just have those strong cards like Haunted Pumpkin, like Apple Saucer. He doesn't have the strike-throughs as the finisher, so he's just falls short of the Solar class. Again, but he has a lot of good options. He's one of the best Swarm heroes, which is Cycle Cap, Pine Clone. What else can Nightcap really do well? Almost want to put him like here. I think because, again, he controls a couple decks which are very strong. He's always a big presence in the meta. I'm going to put him in B tier, but I feel like there was a time where I would have thought he was completely S tier, and I think just over time I've really slowly but surely lost a little bit of respect for Nightcap, even though he is a pretty good hero. You have Gangsta's Paradise, which again, that's an RNG deck. It's fun. Not a very good hero for budget players. Again, best Pine Clone hero though, so gives him some points. Best Swarm hero. I think the fact that he's kind of like the best at a couple of things is the reason why he's in B. B is for best. Even though, in terms of if you just judge how many options he has in terms of actual good decks, he's actually much more similar to Chumpzilla and Green Shadow. But he definitely could be, if you're in a tournament, you could definitely see some Nightcap because he does excel at a couple of things very well. Which I guess is really all you need for a hero to be amazing. Alright, here's Rose. Man, Rose is going to be really tough for me to rate. There were times in the meta where Rose just seemed like the absolute best hero. Her superpowers are like whatever. Godify is one of the weakest ones in the game. Mog is unreliable. Freeze is like okay. Weed Whack is a fine power. So she has that. She has this really weird combination of like the Solar class and the Smarty class, which you end up with like all these controlling superpowers, which she has. And then you have Dragon as a finisher. You have your Brainana. You got your Briar Rose and your Ramp. So it just seems like most of the Rose decks are going to be, you know, you fall a little behind the first couple turns. You do have some decent controlling options early. Nothing too fancy. But you're going to be taking over the game in the mid-range. Very strong sort of like mid-cost, like 4, 5, 6 when you're talking about your Briar Rose. Again, Briar Rose and Solar Winds got nerfed. Back when these were cheap, I would say Solar was the best control class, and then it worked so well with Dragon in the Brainy class, and that's the thing that really made Rose top tier. After the Solar class got nerfed, Rose is still a good hero, just not the greatest. You can play Aggro Rose. You want to check that on YouTube, go ahead. Because again, you got the Solar class, which gives you the Haunted Pumpkin, gives you the Apple Saucers. You're a little bit weak on turn 3, but you can make up for it with a couple other winged cards. And then, of course, you have your great Solar finishers and aggro decks like Elderberry, Astrocado. You have strong cards. Again, does have this freaking Smarty class, which just doesn't really add much to the table. You can run Bean Swarm. Probably not the greatest hero for that. Not enough card draw for that. So you got mid-range control, you got finishers, a little bit of aggro, nothing to say in terms of tempo. Yeah, back when Solar was really strong, again, ramp decks are a lot worse than they used to be. They nerfed all the ramp cards. So back when ramp was a thing, Rose was like way up here. Now that it's not, Rose is somewhere around here. She's probably about the same as Nightcap and Spadal, so I'll put her in B. I think she's a little bit too strong to be in C. Is she better than Chumpzilla? Probably more options. Probably overall better than Chumpzilla. Maybe she's similar. I don't really know. I consider the Mega Hero class to be better than the Smarty. I think it's just the way these two classes work together is overall better than the way the Mega Grow and the Solar work together. And it's the combination of the classes that matter actually much more than their individual strengths. All right, this is probably going to surprise some of you when we go on to Captain Combustible. I honestly think this is the best plant hero. Every single time we do a Captain Combustible deck, almost, it ends up just being ridiculously strong. There is an actual design flaw in Captain Combustible which makes him so good. You can have a garbage deck in Captain Combustible is still just a foot higher than every other plant hero really in the game. The reason is because you have Blazing Bark, which adds 4 power for a plant. Again, you have like Strength on the zombie side, which adds 3. This is the better card because you can just play this, and it also has Embiggen, which grows your guys, and then it also has Time to Shine, and also has Plant Food. So if you can grow one guy to be huge, and then just do cheap bonus attacks with Plant Food and Time to Shine, it's just game over. You can, if you have a 5 attack guy, you go that's already just 9 damage. That's almost half of their health gone. Add a Plant Food, okay, now you got 20 damage that turn, 19 I guess. But and then the one power that doesn't work with that strategy is actually one of the best superpowers in the game, which is Meteor Strike. And this can help aggression and do damage to your opponent's face because this very efficiently clears minions your opponent has off the field. They're in front of your minions and allows them to attack your face. So just the superpowers alone is actually a design flaw in terms of how great these synergize on the highest level of the game, which again is it relies on punching your opponent in the face really, really quickly. And that's besides for the fact that Captain Combustible has access to this card. This is really the only good Repeat Moss hero. Repeat Moss plus Blazing Bark plus Time to Shine is 18 damage. 6, 6, and 6. If you have Blazing Bark and Embiggen, so now you've done 6 plus 8. You've done 14 damage, which is most of their health. That means you have to have done 6 damage to your opponent's face already in order to kill them. You have even Pod Fighter. I've had so much success. You just stick a Blazing Bark, and you have a couple of really cheap. This is the Kabloom class with Captain Combustible, so you have just cheap Puff Shrooms. This thing just does a million bonus attacks, and they all do 7 damage. You can finish off your opponent so quickly. Even Bananasaurus Rex plus Blazing Bark. If your opponent committed all 5 of their brains that turn, they put something strong in the field, this does 14 damage together with Blazing Bark. Blazing Bark is just a freaking ridiculous superpower. Captain Combustible also has a lot of really good early game aggro options. I mean, you got Bonkcho, again, doesn't have the Solar class, so it's not the greatest in that sense. But you got your Fireweeds. You got your, for the Kabloom class, you have Blooming Heart, which is, again, very good. You even have Astro Shroom. You have Puff Shroom, which is a very good aggro card. If you watch any of my aggro Captain Combustible decks, you'll know why. So many good options. Then you have your Pine Clone decks. I would say Pine Clone's not the greatest because the reason really is because Captain Combustible, his superpowers rely more heavily on one big minion rather than a lot of minions, opposed to Nightcaps, which are much more focused on supporting a lot of minions on the field, or even Spitals with Rain. But Pine Clone decks definitely work. They run Captain Swarmy Swarm, where you're just running, which is more of a fun deck, where you're running like Raiding Raptors and Molekale. Not Raiding Raptors, Velociraptor Hunters and Molekale. There is also a deck. If you want to check this out on YouTube, it's the Aggro Tempo Control. I think you ran a bunch of dinosaurs in that deck, and you're using Potatosaurus as a finisher. The reason why all of these decks work is because of the Plant Foods, the Time to Shines, and the Blazing Barks. It just is a built-in, just complete powerhouse. Really hard to describe. Other than maybe just having experience, just in terms of how just every Captain Combustible deck, it's so the superpower combos in this game, I really feel like are so underrated. He can, again, the Kabloom class and the Mega Grow class work so well together because Kabloom focuses very strongly on doing a lot of damage, and so does the Mega Grow class with the Plant Foods and everything like that. I'm actually putting Captain Combustible as S tier because I do believe that he is the best plant hero overall, just in terms of his sheer power Against Captain Combustible, you are never safe. Next, Beta Carotina time. So, yeah. If I was going to put someone in F tier, it probably would have been Beta Carotina. I have had some success playing Control Beta Carotina. I almost feel like she's better at Control than Citron because of some of her superpowers are good, like Uproot is good, and you got a decent Control card on turn 1. Light Speed Seed, horrible superpower. As I described in the superpower tier list, genetic amplification also horrible. So you got your control decks. I haven't had a lot of success. It seems like on paper they should be really good because you have Guardian and then you have a very good finisher in Dragon. It just always seems to fall short. I think because the superpowers really make it fall short. You don't have like some big removal superpowers. You don't have that Wall Knight power or even like the really strong Solar Flare like early game, which again, Solar Flare's early game powers are definitely better than Beta. So mid-range, nothing much. You don't have bonus attacks, don't have much burst. You have Picanolith, but no way to really activate it. You don't even have any strike-through minions. Not much in terms of aggro. You have a couple good tempo decks. We have a deck where you basically, I think we call it Alpha Carotina, where you, it was revolving around putting kind of like one of the only good cards, tempo cards, that Beta Carotina has in Triceratops and keeping it alive by drawing cards. You know, her superpowers are okay with Triceratops because it does activate the Dino Roars, but you don't have a lot of other good dinosaurs. Like, what do you have, like, for tempo? I mean, what do you have? Just Lima Pleurodon. Thank you so much, Mozzalolius. Really appreciate it. Mozzaloisis. Welcome to the Primally. And, I'm just putting it in F tier. I think she's probably, again, has the same sort of amount of options as Citron, but Citron's powers overall are better. I just feel like Beta Carotina, especially her ultimate ability, it's just so flawed. She just does a lot of nothing.
Piece of trash garbage.
Thank you so much to Scout Tuts for subscribing. I don't know how many months that was. It was 9 months. Oh, baby. All right. Beta Carotina sad. Okay, I felt like they added the 2 extra heroes like Hugh Giganticus, which gave such a good option. I feel like Citron was so bad, and I was so excited when they made another hero like Beta, because I feel like make a Citron, but make the superpowers way better, so make an overall better hero, and also like make more deck options because of the superpowers. If they would have given Beta Carotina like 4 decent control superpowers, Beta Carotina might actually end up being one of the better heroes in the game, but if your opponent has better superpowers than you, that means they have a better deck than you. Think about it. So underrated. All right. So speaking of sad heroes, here's Super Brains. Super Brains is a mystery to me because Super Brains actually controls the 2 strongest zombie classes, probably, which are Brainy and Sneaky. The problem with these is that they don't synergize very well together. His superpowers are also good. This is one of the better superpowers in the game. This is one of the best superpowers in the game. Then he has Telepathy, which is a great, solid super. I mean, this is solid. This is not some low-tier superpower. It's fine. Chop is the worst one, but this is still decent. Like, when the worst one is still okay, his superpowers are great. His classes are great. Why isn't Super Brains one of the best heroes in the game? I really think the answer lies in the fact that the strengths of his classes do not actually synergize well together. The strengths of the Brainy class is the ability to have last say. The main strong cards are Teleport, Teleportation Zombie, which again make you able to react to your opponent. And then you have cards like Mustache Monument, which are a finisher. You have Trickster, which is a finisher. So let's just even focus on these 4 cards. You got Trickster, Mustache Monument, Teleport, and Teleportation Zombie. The strengths of the Sneaky class, on the other hand, are the Gravestone. So teleporting those in, not a very good thing. When you're talking about like Trickster, let's say Trickster, Mustache Monument, those are typically going to go together. You're going to need good control classes that involve tricks. Now, the Sneaky class is a decent control class because you have a really strong cards in the mid-range, particularly like Line Dancing Zombie and Pogo and Mix-Up Gravedigger, one of the strongest control strategies in the game. but they don't charge your Tricksters. Trickster is still sitting at 10 cost, which makes it really bad. Now, it used to even be that the, here we go, we're just giving more timeouts, this is fine. It used to be that Barrel of Barrels cost 1, which, you know, that used to be like the cheap 1-cost trick that was very decent at controlling. This was like auto-include in every deck, and that really made Trickster decks better, but now it costs 2, it's just meh. You don't have, what do you have? Smoke Bomb as your 1-cost trick? What are you going to do? You're going to have 2 costs, you're going to have Frosty Mustache. The only early game control trick, which cheap tricks are so important for Trickster decks, is basically just going to be Beam Me Up, which is, again, it's a good card. It's in the Brainy class itself. So you don't have the Trickster synergy. With Mustache Monument, like, what are you going to stick onto a Mustache Monument? It's going to be so great. I guess you could put, like, a gondola. You can stick a Viking. These things are probably going to be just a little bit too slow. So you do have some of your typical sneaky strategies, like Headstone Carver into Gravestones. You can go with Pirates, which are very strong. You can even go Headstone Carver into Science, which is pretty strong. You don't have a way, again, of buffing your Science cards, though. Like, a lot of the Science deck, since it relies very heavily on Gadget Scientist as a finisher, as a strength, you don't have the finishers, because you need a way, besides for Headstone Carver and Drone Engineer, you don't have, like, Sugary Treat or Area 22 or ways to make your guys or Maniacal Laugh, things that really make your guys do a ton of attack. Even though, again, this is a viable strategy. The Pirates are a viable strategy. Trickster, you can make a Super Brains Trickster deck, it's okay. You can make a Super Brains Blob deck. Back when Blob decks were a thing, Blob was the best hero for Blob was Super Brains. Super Brains was the best hero in the game in the Blob meta because he has all these extra bonus attacks and card draws as superpowers. That was perfect for Blob decks and Ramp. Now that Ramp on the zombie side got nerfed, Blob got extremely nerfed. It just brought Super Brains back to meh tier. You can run OTK Raptor, but again, you're relying very heavily on that Raptor. And again, OTK Raptor really did rely on Barrel of Barrels as being a cheap way of making your rating Raptor, it's the 3-cost Raptor card, grow a lot. That together with teleports. Now that Barrel of Barrels cost 2, it's still a viable strategy. It's just meh. It's just not efficient. It's like this is one of the craziest things. Huge Giganticus is going to get a really high tier later on for different reasons, but Super Brains just doesn't have access to these OP superpowers that Huge Giganticus has. Even though his powers are fine, you kind of just play him completely different. He's completely outclassed by Huge Giganticus. He is good for budget players. Again, if you're a budget player, make a Gravestone deck with Super Brains. He's your starting hero. Everyone has him. That's a great idea. He has Science. He has Pirates. You have a lot of really good Headstone Carver decks for budget players with Super Brains. But in the meantime, he's outclassed. He's an okay budget hero. I think we're just going to stick him in C. Again, so many great options, they all just fall short a little bit, which is very, very sad. Almost wish Super Brains was a better hero. Next, Smash. So Smash for budget players is one of the better heroes because he can make budget sports decks, which are really good with the Smash because he has very good cheap budget environments when it comes to Total Eclipse. He has very good budget removal cards when it comes to looking for the BC class that's on top here. He has Alien Ooze, so he has, again, the sports decks, which are very cheap. You can run all your sports cards like the Arm Wrestler, like you got, of course, the almighty cheap team mascot and coach. So that is a good strategy for budget players. Thank you so much, Lucky Streak. 4 months, really appreciate it. That's with a paid sub. Thank you so much. My cousin, Lucky Streak. My actual cousin. On the highest level of the game, though, Smash is actually one of the weakest heroes. He does not have he doesn't have the real strong late game anything. Like, he doesn't have almost any I guess this is the only decent late game card, Maniacal Laugh, which again with the Smash, not even the easiest hero to activate Maniacal Laugh. Now, in terms of early game, late game with the Hardy class just doesn't exist. Again, he has Going Viral, so if you can establish some tempo, using Going Viral is good. That's not, again, the highest level of the game, I don't know if just establishing tempo with sports or with otherwise and just relying on going viral, you're letting your opponent react to you, which on the highest level of the game is not good. You really want to be bursting down your opponent and doing a ton of damage quickly without them being able to react. Even though, again, this is viable. His best early game strategies will either be flag combo, so you can flag with a whole bunch of guys on turn 1. He has some really good options for that. You got your teacher genetic experiment. In the beastie class, you have your cheese cutter, which is one of the best one drops in the game, and with flag zombie for 80 cat, also really solid options. His pet decks are not great. I know he's the only hero that runs pets and camel cross, but again, that's a very low tier deck because it gives your opponent, it's too easy for your opponent to remove your strongest cards off the field and leave you basically with nothing else happening. You give your opponent too many opportunities to respond. You can also go Secret Swimmer, which is, again, it's fine. It's not the most reliable in the highest level of the game, again, because you need a 1-drop or a 0-drop, plus a Secret Agent, plus a Swimmer by turn 2. Very unreliable to do that. It's probably better just to run Flag Swarm. Because even without your flag, you can still swarm 1 or 2 minions at a time, and that's fine, and use going viral. Anyway, budget, he's okay. Highest level of the game, he's actually a very poor hero on the highest level of the game. He's going in C or D. Because I can't even think about, on the highest level of the game, I can't even think of really, honestly, one Smash deck where like, whoa, that's a really good deck. I really got to use the Smash over a different hero. For budget players, he would definitely be higher up here, but honestly, on the highest level of the game, Smash is going in D because he, again, what is the top tier? What is the Smash deck if you're going into a tournament that you just got to bring? And the answer, honestly, I don't know of one. And that's the reason why I'm putting him in D tier. I know some of you might think that's underrating him, but he actually, on again, the highest level of the game, a very easy hero to play against. When you are a plant here and you see, oh, the Smash, you're never scared. Even though he does have very decent... I didn't talk about his superpowers. He has 2 very decent superpowers and then 2 very bad superpowers. This is one of the worst in the game. Even this Frenzy is very circumstantial for Possess to be good. Galvanize is good, not in control decks, but he isn't really a control hero anyway. It's very decent in aggro, and this is actually one of the best superpowers in the game. Maybe because of his superpowers, I should just give him C. He does have really good superpowers. Maybe because of his, combined with his, I think on the highest, okay, this is where I'm at. Highest level of the game, he's either D or F. You were talking about just how great his decks are, but I did say I'm going to give points for budget. And I did say I'm going to give points for superpowers, and his superpowers are, he has a really good, again, not heal. This is not bad. He has a really good group of superpowers. All right, I'll put him in C, and that's for you budget players out there. Big shout out. Here we go. All right, Infinity. Infinity is actually one of the best heroes in the game. Talk about of the non-brainy heroes, he is the best. He's the best non-brainy hero. The crazy and sneaky classes are the next 2 classes, and they combine really well. Like, they're better than these classes are how they synergize. And let me explain. First of all, he has the best pirate deck because he has Grave Robber and he has Quick Draw Con Man. So these are really good 1-drop pirate cards, and then you can go right in, of course, with your Swashbucklers and your Flame Face and your Monkey Pirates, and you can just, that deck is so good. I mean, you guys, if you don't know what a Pirate Infinity is, go check it out on YouTube. It's ridiculously strong. Call that like the smoked fish deck. He's got Pogo Monk. He's a very good control hero. I did recently, it's a few months ago actually, on Flying Up Gaming, I brought back the old school Control Infinity deck, which means you're just controlling for Plankwalker. These people calling me here. You're going to be controlling with Bungee Plumber. You got your Fruitcakes, you got your Line Dancing Zombies, your Pogo, your Mug. You kind of just, again, Bungee Plumber, one of the best early game control cards in the entire game. So Fruitcake, probably the best big removal. This is actually, aside from maybe Shamrock, this is probably the best removal card, big removal card in the game. You have decent environment, a lot of different options for environments, both in terms of control and for aggro / tempo. And of course you have the big finishers, Pogo, Mug, Plankwalker. This deck was amazing. I think it went 10-0. I don't want to spoil it for you, but old school Control Infinity. So really good at controlling, really good at mid-range. you have ways of buffing your guys, and then you have weird cards like Cowboy, and you just Cowboy with Sugary Treat, for example. This just does so much, just 6 damage in every lane, combined with his superpower, which is Brute Strength, makes the Cowboy do a lot of damage. So he doesn't have bonus attacks, which maybe makes him fall a little bit short. He has so many good ways of getting strong guys in the field. No way of doing bonus attacks. Not very good with Valk decks. I really just find that Infinity, one of the top tier, again, super top tier. This is one of the best powers in the game. Strength is one of the better powers, not the greatest. This is probably the worst one, but again, this does reactivate Pogo every once in a while. This is fine. At least it draws a card. Yeah, because of the Pyre decks, because of the control decks, because he has like Splash together with Deadly. I mean, he's the one who has the access to Barrel of Deadbeards with Deadly cards. He has the Splash damage in Trapper territory and Fireworks together with, let's say, Shark. He just has all these really weird synergies between his classes. He also has Dr. Spacetime with a couple interesting Conjure cards. We've done some Conjure Infinity. I guess that's gotten a lot worse since Barrels got nerfed. Infinity is definitely a viable option for any top tier player, and I'm going to be putting him in A tier. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Next, Rusty Boy. All right, Rust Bolt should be a better hero than it is. These two classes don't actually perform well together. It's a little bit strange, but okay. First of all, let's talk about his superpowers. His superpowers are way below average. This is one of the worst in the game. This one's just not bad. This one's horrible, usually. Every once in a while you protect the teacher or something good with this, but very, very circumstantial for Rockwell to be good. And then you have Shrink Ray, which is just like, certainly doesn't make anyone's list and a good candidate for best superpower in the game. So his superpower is overall a mess. So what do you want to do with the, like, what are your finishers for Rust Bolt? How do you win the game? So you can either create tempo and use going viral, which again, you can do sports, not necessarily the greatest sports hero. I guess he has Brain Venom, doesn't really help with sports. You can go science, not the greatest science hero because you don't have a way of adding a lot of attacks to your science guys. You can go science, going viral, it's okay. It's just going to be sticking a lot of minions on the field and, again, giving your opponent an opportunity to react to you. So what about the late game? Let's say, I mean, you have teleports. You got the Brainy class, so Trickster deck. So Trickster decks are okay with Rust Bolt. Every once in a while, you'll see one that does really well. He has some pretty good early game control options, like Rolling Stone on 1, Beam Me Up on 2, Flick or Weed Spray on 3, and then you have Rocket Science, which is a decent control card, but that's kind of like it. You have no way of dealing with your high attack 1-drops like Haunted Pumpkin just wrecks Rust Bolt. Rust Bolt is not good at dealing with guys with 3, or cheap guys with like 3 or more attack, like Haunted Pumpkin, like Apple Saucer, like Fireweed. I know he has some options like Beam Me Up to some of these cards, but typically they're not very good. If you start with your Shrink Ray, but again, very unreliable. So as a control hero, I find him not to be as reliable as, let's say, the heroes that have access to Bungee Plumber, which just answers basically everything your opponent plays on turn 1, unless it's like Garlic. Poison Ivy, I guess he only has Chop or Rocket too. Again, he has Rocket Science, not a bad card. I'm not saying he's a horrible control hero, he's just not as good as Brainstorm, and he's not as good as Infinity either, really. If I had to reliably control with Rust Bolt or Infinity, I would probably pick Infinity, because he overall does have more reliable options of getting into the late, like much better options actually, and getting into the late game. Okay, Rust Bolt is a very fun hero because there are a lot of very fun strategies when you combine the teleports of the Brainy class together with the Hardy class. Notably, you have Stompidon. You have some cards which are like only good with Rust Bolt because you can teleport them in. Stompidon, if you're not teleporting this in, I don't know what you're doing with your life. You got to teleport this in on 4 with Teleportation Zombie or 5 with the teleport. And then you can start playing cards like Middle Manager the next turn. They really start buffing it up. Then you stick a Gladiator in the field and then you win. The same thing really goes with King. Like King, this is an okay card, but it's kind of only really good with Rust Bolt. Not the greatest card in the world, but this gives you an out, because again, if you're teleporting this in, your opponent's not going to just remove this off the field. You do need another minion also to be alive, so that's the reason why King is a circumstantial card, but it's fine. You can go Swarm and then going viral, and I don't know. I don't find the bonus attacks. You don't have high attack, enough attack guys for, let's say, the bonus attacks. Like, what with Rust Bolt are you going to use together So I'm just looking for the brainy class. Like, what are you gonna actually use together with the almighty Lurch for Lunch? Like, what's doing a lot of damage? You're running Viking, like teleport, Viking bonus deck. There's a lot of heroes that can do strategies like that better. Have a lot of other good cards to teleport in their second class than Rust Bolt does. Mustache Miner. Like, what are you putting here? I guess it works with Trickster, but again, Trickster's not the greatest thing. He has his going virals. I feel like Rust Bolt for me is more what I use as a fun, like for fun heroes. Because again, teleporting in some of these cards like King and Stompodon and stuff ends up being very fun. He just doesn't have the finishers. He really, look at these late game cards in the Hardy class, and then look at the ones in the Brainy class. It's like, what are you going to do? You're going to go Mechasaur? Like, it's not a great card. Just have Trickster, basically. Bad Moon Rising. There's a lot better heroes for Bad Moon Rising, like Huge Giganticus and Super Brains. And non-Super Brains and Brainstorm. Anyway, Rust Bolt's a really fun hero. He's just moderately competitive. I do think he's better than Smash, and we'll put him in B tier. He's okay. I mean, it's fine. He has some strong decks, but overall, man. Alright. What are we going to do with Boogaloo? Boogaloo has another problem like a lot of these heroes. I don't know what the really strong Boogaloo deck. If I'm thinking about, like, okay, I'm entering a tournament for PvZ heroes, what is the deck that I'm going to choose? Like, where would Boogaloo even, like, fit into like into the ideas of what is going to be the best deck in the game? I don't really see it. So what are the options for Boogaloo? You can early game Swarm. You have a lot of good early game a few early game crazy options, to be honest. Quickdraw Conman and the Grave Robber and Unlife of the Party. These are all better with other heroes, really with Infinity or Brainstorm. Really not great with Boogaloo. Control Boogaloo is right now a meme deck. It's very nice controlling and trying to get them with Plankwalker, Garg, throwing Garg, it's fine. You have your Splash Gargs deck. Again, good heroes are usually able to play around the Splash to Gargs deck. It's not actually as powerful as it may have seemed in the when Garg throwing Garg through a Zombot video. You're going to mid-range, you're going to tempo. I don't know what Boogaloo does. The crazy class is good. You got some decent control options. You don't have finishers. So having control options with no finishers is useless. You're going to go pets. What are you going to go Swarm? You can go Secret Swimmer. Again, there's some good options. It's just, man. What's with Boogaloo's superpowers? Actually, it's very decent superpowers because he has 2 superpowers that do 3 damage, which is ridiculous. These are both really good. Evaporate is actually way better with Boogaloo than with Morticia because he can do 1 damage. He has Bungee Plumber, Firework Zombie even, Barrel of Deadbeards. Can't teleport in the Barrel of Deadbeards, so very hard card to activate. Backup Dancers, really meh. He's not the best dancing hero. Boogaloo's sad. Does Boogaloo get points? I feel like Boogaloo's very similar to the Smash in terms of the highest level of the game. You're just hoping your opponent doesn't have answers to your deck and hoping to win on the highest level again. Again, there's a lot of fun decks for every hero. He's not as free-to-play friendly as Smash. I think overall his powers are they're about the same as Smash, maybe a slightly worse. But, yeah. You guys thinking B? This is either C or D. I really don't think Boogaloo on the highest level of the game is a good hero, and he's not good for budget players either, and for that reason I'm putting him D. Again, there's some good Boogaloo decks. He's really one of the weaker heroes in the game. Pretty sad. And here we go. Next. Brain Freeze. Here's another problem. Problematic hero. Now, he does have the sneaky class, so pirate decks with Brain Freeze, again, are good. They're not as good as with Infinity, so he is outclassed for pirates in Infinity. I don't care what Reddit says. When it comes to the beastie class, the sneaky class, what is his finishers? What is he going to do? He's going to go for a maniacal? He's one of the worst maniacal heroes, and Morticia's way better. He has Pogo Mug into Plankwalker, but not a lot of very good early game control. Again, your Nibbles and your Extinction Events and things like that are not going to be as good as Fruitcake and Bungee Plumber. So he falls short of terms of that. He's got Pirates. It's not as good as the other one. I don't know what to do with Brain Freeze. Again, what's the greatest? We've had a couple good decks. The Moving Pet decks was fine. Pets in general are just meh. I don't know where to put him. His superpowers also are really trash. This is a great contender for worst superpower in the game. Galvanize is the only good one. This is a great superpower. This is way below average, and this is below average. I mean, his superpowers are just crap. It's really, really hard to find Brain Freeze. Oh, he has one Pirate deck, which is okay. Again, Area 22 and Maniacal Laugh are good options in Pirate decks. It's great, but it doesn't outclass Infinity by no stretch, and he doesn't have good late game control either. It really does not have the late game control options. Can go Imps. It's not worth it. Brain Fart's going in D. Sorry, Brain Freeze. Just not enough good options. Alright. Going from the worst to the best. I do believe Professor Brainstorm is the best zombie hero. And it's not because of his superpowers. His superpowers are actually kind of trash. Eureka's one of the worst powers in the game. Now, summoning is very good. Telepathy is quite good. Backup dancers is less so. I do actually find a lot of use for dance off in a lot of decks. One is with Valk, because it does make two guys. Very good at chump blocking, and it also works with the ramp dance deck. Probably the best dance deck right now is the ramp dance deck with Brainstorm. Very reliable, where you're using this together with Headhunter, which really does a lot. This actually counts as 3 dancers, creates 2 dancers, and it's a dancing superpower. So this is definitely one of the best dance decks in the game. But the thing that really makes Brainstorm really shine, of course, are the Trickster decks are the best in the game because you have the best early game options for control, namely with Bungee Plumber. Then you have Beam Me Up, and you have Fruitcake, and you just have so many other options like Rocket, even Wrath is fine. So many good options for control. You can even like teleport in Barrel of Deadbeards, and of course this is really the only hero that Valkyrie is good with. And again, this is one of the best ways, as I've been saying again and again in this video, the best way of winning is just punching a million damage into your opponent's face. And Brainstorm does that better than really any hero in the game. Arguably even better than Captain Cabal, probably on the same level. Valkyrie, of course, teleporting this in, or teleport with a bonus tag, or using this with Mustache Monument. That is a Brainstorm strategy, and it's really one of the best strategies in the entire game. Looks like I'm gonna have to make a mod here at some point. But anyway, very good at controlling every level of the game, early game, late game. You can definitely do there are a lot of really good swarm strategies like Professor Brain Swarm, Quick Draw Conman, and this actually worked very well with the Brainy class with cards like... I'm not going to say this is the greatest deck in the game, Professor Brain Swarm, where you're running Interdimensional Zombie, which will buff your Unlife of the Party twice. It probably is also arguably the best science hero, because one of the best ways to do science is to get a bunch of your science cards, buff them up with cards like Sugary Treat, and with Moon. These are going to be cards which will give your science guys extra damage, particularly the bullseye ones. Really, really good strategy. And then you come in with Gadget Scientists before they're able to do anything. That is a really good Brainstorm deck. I don't know if I have that particular Brainstorm deck up on YouTube yet, but I definitely will. So Brainstorm is really one of the better Bad Moon Rising heroes too, just because of all the really strong early game cards. Then you have Nebula, and you also have Egg, which is very good at activating your Bad Moon Rising. So they can't remove the Egg. You play Egg into Nebula, gives you 1 extra brain, then it hatches, get 2 extra brains. Really one of the only ways of getting 3 extra brains in a turn. So that would be the Mystery Egg, sticking that into a Nebula. Alright, it just feels like Brainstorm just opens up, because of the teleports and the way it combines with the Crazy class, which is also so good at early game control and buffing up your minions. Buffing up minions and then doing bonus attacks will do those big bursts of damage. Anyway, enough said. Brainstorm's definitely going in S tier. I really do believe this is the best zombie hero. Not great for budget players, even though you can make science decks. Really, maybe I should really try to bring back like budget science decks with Brainstorm. It could be that would actually really work. Overall, in my opinion, because of Valk and Trickster and the really high attack bonus stat combo is really the best hero in the game. Next. Should be in Q tier. We're going to Immorticia. Immorticia is an underrated hero. Really underrated. Really one of the better heroes, actually, in the game. There's a lot of really, again, cool options you can do with the Morticia by teleporting in things. It's the only hero where Gargs are even decent. Like, teleport Zombot. Like, Zombot is not a good card. It's actually decent with the Morticia. You can check out the teleport Zombot decks we've been uploading recently to Fry 'em Up Gaming. Teleporting Garg, throwing Garg. Teleport Nurse. These are cards that are going to be able to, they suck when you play them on the field because they die to Shamrock, but all of a sudden because you have teleport, now these cards are good. She's so good at activating a lot of things. Even Maniacal Laugh, the flaw in this card is it doesn't necessarily have a good target to hit, but since you can teleport things in, you can even go like beam me up. You can first of all go summoning and or bats and then Maniacal Laugh. You can beam me up, Maniacal Laugh on 8, or you can just you have this card which is very good with Maniacal Laugh, which is Parasail Zombie, which again cannot get removed. The problem with Maniacal Laugh is you're not necessarily going to have a target. This is very, very difficult target to remove. Maniacal Laugh works a lot more reliable. Not a great Bad Moon Rising hero, even though you have Goat. Just doesn't seem like there's a lot of other really good options. You can do the Science strategy, which I described in Brainstorm with Immorticia, where you buff things up, let's say with Area 22, even with your lunch boxes or your Vitamin Zs. You're definitely able to play Science with Immorticia. You're able to play Tricksters with Immorticia. Again, it's not the greatest Trickster deck, but with Nibble, at least you have a lot of early game options that are going to be controlling your opponent, like Extinction Event, like the Nibble, etc. I think that Immorticia, because she is like the one that makes the BC class almost into something. For example, you even have cards like Ancient Vampire and Vampire, which are very bad cards, but all of a sudden when you're teleporting them in, all of a sudden they become decent cards. You can teleport this in from a team up, it does a lot of things. So because of her teleports and the Brainy class, it really does open up a lot in the Beastie class, and there really just end up being a lot of really, really strong Immorticia decks, both the Science and Tricks and stuff. I'm going to be putting Immorticia in A tier. I think she's not quite as good as Brainstorm, but basically on the same level as Infinity. And we'll move on to Z-Mech. So Z-Mech's had some ups and downs. Back in set 1, he was the worst hero in the game by far, because he had two problems. His superpowers were horrible. This did not do the same thing. This used to be a really bad power, and he didn't have any big removal. And they've really changed those. They've made Missile Madness one of the best powers in the game. They gave him Lightning Bolt instead of Electro Bolt instead of Backup Dancers. And then these two superpowers, I mean, Rockwall is meh. Strength is pretty good, so as a secondary power. I'll tell you the problems with Z-Mech. Z-Mech is actually not a very good control hero because he doesn't have late game finishers. Again, the Hardy class, I feel like there really should be like a Hardy late game finisher card. Maybe if they would ever add more cards to this game. It's just lacking in terms of those cards that are going to work in a control setting. He also still only has limited late game control. It's really just Fruitcake. And you're really relying very heavily in a control deck to get your Exploding Fruitcakes to deal with their big guys. And again, the Crazy class also just does not have very good finishers. Like, you can't last long enough to get Garg Feast. Valk is just not a good finisher unless you're able to teleport it in or do bonus attacks. So, he has very good early game control combined with his superpowers. He's got all the Bungee Plumbers, all the Rolling Stones. It used to be, there was a time where Z-Mech became very good when Swarm decks were extremely strong. But that really, his Swarm cards got nerfed. Conman used to be a 1/4, and then you would have cards like Escape Through Time, which there was a certain meta this was really good. This used to cost 1, so this was really good at protecting like your Swarm, a cheap way of doing that.
I got another tier list for you to do, Fry.
Thank you,
How
Macho
about
Bagel.
ranking the legends in the game, the various different types of decks, aggro, solar flare, conjure leap, and how about the strategy?
Thank you so
Dex
much. Yeah, I
XP.
might do a strategy tier list. We'll see about that. So, what are the strategies that actually work with Z-Mech? You're going to do sports. Again, that's good for budget players. Not even the greatest for budget players because it doesn't have a cheap big removal card. It's just Exploding Fruitcake, unlike the Smash. So, what are you going to do? You're going to go Flag Swarm into what? It's okay. Flag Swarm decks are fine, but it's not. Z-Mech doesn't have like these top tier decks that are just going to be doing a ton of damage to your opponent's face. They're very much relying on sticking a lot of guys in the field, letting your opponent react to it, hoping your going viral is going to go well. Again, there are some good Z-Mech decks, but nothing really to write home about. His superpowers are really, really good. I'm going to put him in the same category as Smash and Super Brains. He's got good superpowers. He's got a few good decks, but nothing just absolutely amazing. And we will move right along. Got a couple heroes left, just Neptuna. Neptuna. Neptuna was a very good control hero until all the cards like Apple Saucer and the 3-attack guys like Apple Saucer, Haunted Pumping, which has 4 attack, and you also have Fireweed, which has 3 attacks. So she's not very good at controlling those. Used to be she was relying very heavily on Sumo, but particularly like Weed Spray and Rolling Stone in order to do her controlling. And those really, again, these just fall short of Bunchy Plumber because there's so many things, Bonk Choy, so many things that she just does not have answers to as control. Now, she does have some mid-range control, and Pogo mixed up Gravedigger into Plankwalker. It's viable. It's just not the greatest in the game. Sort of very similar hero right now to Brain Freeze. I'm trying to think, like, Neptuna has sports. It's just meh. Where is Neptuna going to just absolutely excel? In control decks? Way worse than Infinity. Tempo? Anyway, not very good on the zombie side. Aggro? Does she really have aggro? You can go Pirates. Again, we've had a couple good Neptuna decks. The good Neptuna decks we've had was Going Viral Pirates, where you run Pirates and then you run Going Viral, which synergizes very well with them, that tempo strat. Again, Pirates are pretty reliable in tempo. You can also run Warlord, which is not only a pirate, it also synergizes with Pirates because it's buffing up all your cards that are on the field when played. That was okay. We went Flag Swarm. Flag Swarm with Pogo mixed up Gravedigger in the end, and Warlord. That deck also did really well. There were some good options for Neptuna, just nothing majorly good. I guess she's basically on the same level as... I think her decks, because of Going Viral, actually did make her better than Brain Freeze. She's definitely not worse than Smash. Maybe I would almost put her up in B. She does have classes that combine pretty well with each other. Really hard for me to say where you're going to go. It's either low B or high C tier. Is she better than Smash and ZMAX? She really is. She's probably not quite as good as Rust Bowl, but close. I'm going to put Neptune in B. And finally, Huge Giganticus. Oh boy. So, Huge Giganticus, if we're going on the fun tier list, Huge Giganticus goes in S. I mean, this is really has got to be the most fun hero in the entire game. Where am I going to put him competitively? Now, even though I put Super Brain so much lower, his superpowers really open up an entire new thing for him, and that is Conjure. I mean, all of his powers work really well with Conjure, particularly with Dr. Spacetime. They do conjure, a bunch of cards and make that do well with Conjure. He can activate his cards that need to hit face in order to conjure with Ice Moon. He's constantly conjuring all these teleports. Teleporting in Spacetime and Raptor and things like that are always really good. And of course, he just has Iron Border. His superpowers are just completely broken, as I talked about in the superpower tier list. So we definitely got that going for him. I'm not actually going to be putting Huge Giganticus in S tier, because even though he's one of the most fun heroes in the game, and he has the greatest superpowers, I still don't think he's like the top tier competitive. He's very good with Bad Moon Rising. Conjure Leap is amazing. Of course, that deck much better with Huge Giganticus and Super Brains because of his superpowers. He's not very good with Trickster decks. He can just kind of do anything because his superpowers are so great. Like, you can go OTK Raptor, which isn't necessarily the most reliable strategy, but HG just gets it done. You can just go Dr. Spacetime and any of your Conjure, and he just gets it done with Pogo Mug. Pogo Mug just goes in every single deck. Very difficult to play Plankwalker together with Huge Giganticus because it's a little bit late, but there are a lot of cards he activates, like Gondola. And, usually this is a bad card. Now, teleporting Gondola is a very slow, unreliable strategy, but at least he makes it work. Like, Mechasaur, he can sometimes pull off for Mechasaur since he has a lot of card draw. If he gets his Huge Giganticus power, I guess there's a lot of brainy heroes who can teleport in Mechasaur, but if he gets his superpower, it makes things cost less. With Bad Moon Rising, that's the reason why he's so good, because Terraformer 10,000 makes everything cost less. He's has built-in ramp into his kit. He also has the only hero with built-in environments into his kit. So you can, instead of spending slots in your deck, using them on environments, you can be using them on cards that are going to be helping your win condition. You don't have to worry about environmental removal, because he has 3 out of 4 of his powers are environmental removal. His superpowers would put him in S. Some of his strats put him in S. I really am not going to actually put him in the same tier as Brainstorm, because again, when it comes to tier S, I need this to be the most competitive hero in the game, and he probably is not. He is there. He is very competitive. He does fall short, in my opinion, of Brainstorm. He's definitely going to be very, very comfortable on this A tier, though. Really, really just way up there with some of the supreme, classes in the game. If you need any more reference to Hugh Giganticus, what his good decks are, you could just please reference all my YouTube channels, because I feel like he's probably the hero that I play the most, just because he's so much fun in terms of his conjuring. Of course, Conjure Leap, if you haven't seen that, you gotta check that out. But anyway, guys, that's all I got. That is the hero tier list. Super happy with how this turned out. If you have any more creative ideas for tier lists, please let me know them in the comment section below. I do have a lot of ideas for you guys, so I will be uploading those. I will be doing those basically once a week, a new tier list. We're going to be doing like the tribe tier list for clock synergy and all that. We're going to be doing the waifu tier list, details to follow. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoy. Peace, this is Fry. That was not bad. Alright, guys, I'm actually in a rush, so I'm going to call it right there. That's all I got time for today. Whoops. Thank you all for joining. How many people do we have for the end of this tier list? Over here on Twitch. 609. Not bad. So we did upload a highlight video today. I will probably start to the Fry 'em Up channel, be uploading 2 videos a week. A highlight video, which again, I'm trying to hire a video editor, someone to do that, and then these tier lists. It'll be basically every like Tuesday and Friday uploading, probably. So again, I haven't received any of the applications back. I did for the video editor application. I asked them to do a little work, actually take some of the highlights and create a little video for me. So that's going to take people a few days until I actually get applications. Hopefully that will go quite well. Music tier list. I don't even pay attention to the music of the heroes. I actually have a lot of stuff to do today. I'll probably will not be streaming this evening, but we'll see. Yeah, that was it. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.